Hey guys, welcome back. If you are new here, we are Far Out Tiny Homes. I am Jillian Wise. I am the owner. We're here to inspire and educate, and today's topic is all about tiny home design. We want to show you where you begin, the correct tools to use to have a successful design journey, and where to go from there. All of our custom clients begin this journey, so take this advice and begin designing your very own tiny home. So where do you begin in your tiny home design journey? I know the task can seem a little bit overwhelming and daunting, but I'm here to break it down in a few easy steps that will make this process seem a little bit more obtainable. So the first piece of advice I want to touch on is design an iPad. Now I know not everyone has an iPad, but if you do, this has been the best piece of equipment that we have used for helping our clients design their unit. So basically, obviously you got to have an iPad. We do recommend purchasing Procreate, which is an awesome design and creative studio, just an app on the iPad. And what's great about this feature is you can go in and download grid paper of various sizes and then add it to your drawing platform, your drawing board, and then draw over the grid paper so you get a real sense of space within your tiny home design. This is important because as we move on to the next steps, you're going to want to know what every square foot really has within the detail. Another great feature of using Procreate is the fact that you can erase, very simple, and you can also hide the grid paper. So if you're like, I just want to see the drawing without the grid paper, you can easily turn off the layers, and then that way you're able to see more of what is happening on the screen without the grid paper. This also makes housing your designs very easy because you can create stacks of tiny home designs, and then that can help you lead to the evolution of your final design. If you don't have access to an iPad, or perhaps you just don't want to purchase Procreate, I recommend heading out to Office Depot, Target, Walmart, any store that's going to carry just plain graphing paper. You can snag a stack of graphing paper for like $5 to $7. I'll link Amazon's graphing paper that we actually send to our clients in the description below. Super inexpensive, and basically this just gets them in that thinking chair, gets our clients in that thinking chair to start putting actual pencil to paper. Now I know some of us were like, I don't want to go that digital route. We want to go the paper route, the pencil route. Totally fine. Just know that when you're working with a custom home builder, you're going to need to very clearly define the lines, and generally we ask folks that are using the grid paper and pencil to define their lines with Sharpie markers. That way when they scan the document into their computer and send it our way, we're not having to squint at faint lines, because you don't want to mess anything up within a tiny home design. You have such a small amount of space. You want to make sure that you're understanding exactly what that space is going to be used for. So once you begin the process of designing your tiny home, you're always going to want to consider budget. We have an awesome budget breakdown video right here that shows you where we were with our first tiny home. We had a minuscule budget of $10,000 cash, and we were able to make this happen. We detail how we did it and how much we ended up spending at the end of the video. After you watch that, you can always watch the tour video here that walks you through the Blue, which was our first tiny home build. Let's head over to my desk where I have my iPad set up, and we can kind of go through what we do on there together. Okay, so we have our setup complete and we are ready to go. Again, this is Procreate. I've just downloaded some grid paper onto this app. Now, if you're using paper and pencil, totally fine too. I'm just gonna work with my iPad because it's my preference. So basically here was a little drawing that I was working on earlier. Now I want to be able to use, this is for the same client, so I want to be able to use the same stack. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn this layer off, and now I'm back to just my plain grid paper. I'm going to add another layer. They're kind of getting out of order, whoops, but I'm going to add another layer so I can begin working on this grid paper. One item to keep in mind is that when you do begin this process of design, you have to account for interior measurements within this space only. So generally speaking, tiny homes have a width of 8.5 feet and then a length of up to 40 feet. But you must account for framing, interior finish, and exterior siding. Those are the three big ones that you must account for. Now, for us at Far Out Tiny Homes, we save about 5 inches on each side, okay? We want one single square to represent 1 square foot. I do like to count out. So obviously, if we're going to only be working with 7.5 foot interior, I just want to make sure that I count out the right space. So what's great about Procreate is you can draw your line, hold, and then the system will auto-correct and draw it straight for you. And here we're just creating a 24-foot tiny home. So again, when we're working with exterior dimensions, we're going to cut off about a foot. So if this is 1 square foot, we're just going to come in here and do something like this. And this is just going to tell me to account for the lost space. This is generally the tongue. So in case the client does want to build something on the tongue, I like to draw that out as well. Now, when creating your tiny house, you want to make sure you know exactly where those axles are going to be. And I usually do count for about 12 inches of depth, so 1 square. For this specific unit, if I remember correctly, they're kind of about in this general area. So we're going to want to make sure that we account for this on both sides. Boom, just like that. Okay, so now you kind of have an idea of exactly where your axles are going to be placed, and then you can just start drawing. You've already accounted for the exterior loss in both width and length, and now the fun can begin. Now, we find it really important to make sure that you do account for partition walls and partition wall depth. You're going to want to make sure that you connect with your builder or speak to somebody who has experience of how thick that's going to be. We generally account for about 4 inches depending on what the interior finish is going to be. Now, when it comes to designing the kitchen, you're going to also want to know the exact specs of any refrigerators, cooktops, hot water heaters, maybe even dishwasher or washer and dryer that you're putting into the space. That way you can account for any walls that need to go around them and any electrical that needs to be placed within the unit. Okay, this is where we get to see our tiny home design come to life. This is also where in your drawing we can shed a little bit of light on perhaps some areas that you weren't totally sure of. If you're multitasking, come back to me. This is a tiny home designer's inside secret. Okay, are you guys ready for your moment of truth? Go ahead and grab some chalk. Any chalk will do. We're gonna head outside and begin to create this space. Now, if you don't have access to a big place outdoors, whether it's a parking lot, a front driveway, or a backyard, you can do the same exercise in your home. Just grab yourself some masking tape or some painter's tape, and don't forget a tape measure. This is when you really get to see your tiny home come alive. Go ahead and grab your tape measure and mark out the interior dimensions of your tiny home. Take care to try to keep lines as straight as possible, even though this isn't actually crucial. You're just getting a sense of the space. Make sure you do not forget to mark out all sides and all axles. You can also mark where your front door is going to be and any potential windows. So as you're working on creating that interior space, just make sure you account for interior dimensions only when you're out there drawing it out. And don't forget the axles. That's a really important element where you're going to want to place, perhaps cupboards or built-in cabinetry or couches over that space to hide it. Some people also use that space as a step into the unit. So kind of depending on what your tiny home is going to look like and the aesthetic you're going for, there's all sorts of different ways to work in those axles into the design. Are you ready to smash that like button yet? I hope so. And if you're finding this content useful, don't forget to subscribe. We have new videos out every Tuesday and Thursday. As always, keep it groovy.